Okay, so looking at the sheep brain then, if you look in your objectives, you'll see there's an asterisk by the different structures looking at the sheep brain. So we're starting on page 14 in objective number 3, cerebellum. So if I look at this guy here, we can see the cerebellum is that little brain that comes off the back here. So cerebellum. And then the Dura Mater, we don't have on your version, but we have a nice representation here. This one has the Dura Mater. So you can see how kind of tough and canvas-like that structure is that covers the brain. So that's the Dura Mater. So maybe you've heard of epidural before, that some people get like when during labor and delivery. That's when they're throwing some anesthetic to bathe the nerves, but they want to keep it outside the Dura Mater. So epi means on top. And if you have a good anesthesiologist, they'll deliver that medicine over the top of the Dura Mater, but bathing the nerve roots as it pokes through there. But if they poke through the epidural, or through the Dura Mater, then they can get a little cerebrospinal fluid that leaks out, and it causes a really bad headache in the mother. So that's a complication of an epidural. It goes away. Sometimes you have to go in and actually repair that little hole with a little blood patch using the mother's blood, but it's most of the time, you know, I've had 6 children. 3 of them were with an epidural, and they were perfect, no problems. It was awesome. So you can't walk around right away after you have a baby when you've had an epidural, because your things are still kind of numb and asleep, but the lack of pain is a definite benefit. Okay, so that's the Dura Mater, and then turning it over, looking at the underside, we can see those cranial nerves that you're responsible for. So the olfactory bulb here are these swellings. So if you turn your sheep brain over, you should be able to see that those swellings make up the olfactory bulb. This one's a little bit ripped up, but you can see. Yeah, some of the sheep brains are, yeah, like this one. This one's been totally removed, but here, this one, I can see there's a little bit of remainder. So then those swellings, remember, continue on into the brain as the olfactory tract. So this lighter, again, portion here is the olfactory tract, ending again in the olfactory bulb. Can you see that okay up there? Okay. All right, then we have the optic nerve. So going back to this guy here, there's that X-like structure here. So the top of the X on either side is the optic nerve. And then where they cross over, I'll go back to this one because that one's covered by Dura. So these have been cut, but the optic nerves would be coming off here. And then where it comes down, here, this is the optic tract. And then in the middle, right in the middle of that X, is the optic chiasma. So optic tract, optic nerve would be there, again, shown better here. Here's the remainder of the optic nerve. And optic chiasma in the middle. Then looking at the next page, just looking at the, again, more external features, the longitudinal fissure runs the length of the sheep brain. So longitudinal fissure. And then we need to cut this in half. So the best way to cut in half is, oh, one more thing.
You want to show them
that
the midbrain pons would do? Because I'll do it from a whole brain view versus like a sagittal cut.
Sure, okay. Separate your cerebral cortex from the cerebellum. Do you see the baby's butt that appears in there? So these, and if you're really separated, you can see there's 2 top swellings and 2 smaller swellings. This again is the corpora quadrigemina, part of the midbrain. And then if you turn it over, remember those V-like structures of the cerebral peduncles? So here's one swelling of the cerebral peduncle, here's the other swelling of the cerebral peduncles. So that's the midbrain. And then here, if I look at a side view, remember I said the pons is a lot shorter in the sheep brain than it is in the human brain, but there's still that swelling there. So that's your reference point for finding the midbrain. Because I remember when I took anatomy for the first time, I struggled with that midbrain. So find the pons, which is the swelling, And then just above that is the midbrain, and it's the V-shaped structure here of the cerebral peduncles. So then we have the pons, and then this whole structure here is the medulla oblongata. So it's oblong. And then where it narrows again is that spinal cord. Any other comments or hints about? Okay, so you said you'll show this view for the lab exam?
Identify those structures, I'll do it that way.
Okay, okay. All right, and then, so then we're gonna cut. So the best way to cut is to lay the sheep brain down like this and try to center your knife down that vessel that runs down the middle of the medulla and right through the optic chiasma, and then a gentle kind of sawing action straight down, and you'll get a nice, hopefully, sagittal view. Mine wasn't very good. But try to, you know, be as careful as you can and slow. And then we can start to look at some of these structures here. Deke can help. Did you get it cut?
I think so.
Great. Good. So once we do an overview, then we're going to have you point to each part, and I'll walk around and Deke and I will verify that you can find each part. We'll kind of go through piece by piece. So let's look at structures in a sagittal view. This lighter structure here looks like a flattened C shape. What do we say that was called? Corpus callosum, yep. And if you put your probe in there, see how there's a space that I can actually separate it? And if you dig down in there, there's this brown tissue that we find there, and we'll also find some in our third ventricle. See the round thalamus here? So there's the third ventricle, and there's some more of this choroid plexus. Remember that brown tissue I said you would find there? So here's choroid plexus, and here's choroid plexus. So lateral ventricle, third ventricle, thalamus, and then coming off like a little ponytail off of the thalamus is this gland. Remember what the name of this gland is? Yeah, pineal gland. Somebody thought it looked like a pineapple shape. That's where it got the name pineal. But it looks like a little ponytail coming off of the thalamus. It's the pineal gland. And some people, depending if you cut it, or how you cut it, you may have missed it, and it might be on the other side, on the other view. So that's the pineal gland. Then, if you look at the side, see this indentation here? That's that cerebral aqueduct. And remember I said that's a nice landmark to find your parts of your midbrain again. So there's that baby's butt of the corpora quadrigemina on one side of the cerebral aqueduct, and here's the cerebral peduncle on the other side. Also looking here, the thalamus, we have this kind of shiny lower portion here. It's probably a little better on this side. Here it is. So this shiny lower portion here is the hypothalamus, and the pituitary gland has been cut from your sheep brain, but it would be hanging off here. Like if we look at these parts, again, that's that optic nerve, optic tract, but the pineal gland would be here. So there's the hypothalamus, just that region below the thalamus. So again, cerebral aqueduct, corpora quadrigemina, cerebral peduncles of the midbrain, and then we continue down, and there's that fourth ventricle tucked in the cerebellum. And then we have the swelling of the pons. Again, it's kind of a short swelling here. And then this medulla oblongata, and then the spinal cord. Any other hints or suggestions in the sagittal view?
When it comes to the lab exam time, the kind of the devil's in the detail of the question. So like, obviously you got to make sure you know what you're, but if I'm looking for like a space, even though that's like a ventricle, like when I look for the cerebral aqueduct, I'll say like, name this groove or name this canal ventricle, third ventricle, and then the fourth ventricle. I'll always ask for like a space, so at least you can kind of narrow it down to one of those three, based on what I'm looking for. And then if I'm looking for a structure, it could be anything from the corpus callosum to, a cerebral peduncle or corpus quadrigemina or something like that. So.
And there's some labeled pictures on Blackboard that you can practice with these structures. There's blank pictures and then there's labels.
I printed